It's my pleasure to continue the conversation and invite the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, Francesco and the Assistant Secretary for Fossil Energy and Carbon Management of the U.S. Department of Energy to the stage for a continued conversation, as I think we've seen a conversation around energy security, and now we're moving to the how and the application, certainly something that was drawn out from Musaba and ADNOC. Francesco, much like the Atlantic Council in January, IRENA has been at the forefront of thinking through this year and the COP as we galvanize energy transition priorities in the context of what we're doing here in Dubai now, but that began a long time ago. Can you speak a little bit about this journey of how we started IRENA's leadership and ensuring that we saw a focus on the clean energy deployment that is necessary for the energy transition, and how that's being applied here in Dubai?
So commenting on this, I remember we discussed this call for the triple of renewable installed capacity. That has been taken by Dr. Sultan, has become the pledge that has been signed by, I think, yesterday already 123 countries, and it will be part also the final communique. I think it's needed that I explain what is behind this triple, because the triple is just a translation in terms of gigawatt or terawatt of what the Paris Agreement says. So, and with 2 degrees goal and making all efforts to stay on the 1.5 trajectory. And there we have Mr. Curtiza, that has been the hero that made possible coming with a 1.5 report at the IPCC in Katowice, where the IPCC very clearly setting the pathway to that. So 43% reduction in 2030. But we know that number should be translated in something that was really actionable. So the 43% reduction doesn't mean that we have to reduce the use of fossil fuel. And but the demand of energy, also if with efficiency measure, will be growing a little bit inevitably. So at the end, there was going to be a gap between the supply, because fossil fuel should have to reduce, and demand was increasing. So triple the renewable installed capacity is just having in 2030 the 11 terawatts of renewable energy, clean energy. They make possible for the world not create disruption in the system, but at the same time be in line with the achievement of the Paris Agreement goal. This was the triple is about, is what our analysis has brought as a contribution to the COP. And if I can, I don't know how we manage this. If you want, I can be short and coming again, but there is one thing that I wish to say, because the pledge is a promise, but as also to identify how we can change the path. So why we have not been enough speed in the past. In our point of view, there are 3 impeding barriers, and I wish to link with Amos would say. Sometime I think that finally the White House is also reading our report, because we put as a first priority, as an impeding barrier, the infrastructure. So we cannot think that Africa, Southeast Asia, where the economic growth is happening at a certain rate, may have the renewable energy that is needed if they don't have the infrastructure for that. Today in Africa, we are curtailing the energy that we produce through renewables, because we have no other way to plug, and we have no other way to distribute. So the cost of money for Africa, of the investment, is the fever, is not the illness. So the infrastructure is very relevant. And I will close, so try to be brief, and I was talking with Amos a moment. We have tried, I sent a letter to Dr. Sultan, we sent documents to the negotiator. We think that we need from this scope, coming with the call for the multilateral financial institutions to focus on the building on the infrastructure and the integration that we need, in line with what Amos have just said. This doesn't mean that the multilateral financial institution can do this alone, because also they have not the capacity for the challenge that is in front of us. But having a clear understanding, a clear plan, a clear priorities, this could be a way to attract a small share of the 150 trillion of financial assets around the world to the just cause.
I think the thread of infrastructure really speaks to what Amos was discussing in terms of economic prosperity and the need for that to be a galvanizing force to make this energy transition accelerate and see the type of deployment you're speaking about. The other half of the conversation is very much about the discord in the world and the challenges that we face with energy security. You know, Brad, 80% of global energy consumption still remains in the fossil space. As you look at this COP and we come together on the conventional side of the equation, actions on methane, actions on carbon management around the whole community, what is your perspective in terms of the maturity and what is being marshaled here for a transformative and managed transition to help achieve those end aims?
Great. Thanks, Landon. And I think Fred and Musab El-Kabi actually really articulated well the persistence of the incumbent energy system. And if we fail to take that seriously at our own peril in terms of accomplishing our broader climate agenda, I would just note that carbon management, methane, all those things need to be embedded in a broader set of comprehensive and aggressive mitigation strategies. Francesco talked about the tripling of renewable energy, also ending net deforestation, tackling non-CO2 greenhouse gas emissions, and in this COP on the methane front, I am absolutely thrilled at the commitments that have been made. I think we're seeing a kind of global mobilization that is comparable in form to the Montreal Protocol in terms of its significance. We really need that kind of global success right now. It's, for all the reasons that have been discussed, it's a very challenging time in the world. And methane, because of the rapid advance in technology, the growing industry and governmental commitments, we literally have a shot, a serious shot, at achieving near zero emissions on methane in the oil and gas sector and making substantial progress in other sectors. So the methane sprint, we were hoping for about $200 million in financial commitments, and we're now over $1 billion. I really want to applaud those of you in the room that were involved in the development of the oil and gas decarbonization charter. The commitment to near zero by 2030 coming from companies representing 40% of global production is extraordinary. And you solve a problem by making the first commitments to solve it. And some of the companies involved were making their first commitments to tackle the problem. And we can build from there. And so that's critically important. On carbon management, we're seeing enormous progress in the world, and we can talk about, if you want, the carbon management challenge. We had the first meeting of governments yesterday. Day before yesterday. But
build out a little bit more what the carbon management challenge is.
So the carbon management challenge was announced by President Biden in April. We now have 20 countries engaged. What I'm especially excited about, it is the true diversity of our globe is reflected in the membership. We have the largest oil and gas producers in the world, the United States, Saudi Arabia, UAE. We have Norway, Canada. We also have countries that have no fossil fuels and they have decarbonized power sectors, so Iceland, Sweden. We have, and this was very intentional from the outset, we have really critical emerging economies, developing countries. Brazil and Indonesia are co-chairs. Just in the past week, we've had Mozambique, Kenya, and Senegal join. Egypt is a member. And the whole effort is to drive global ambition. The science tells us that we need to be around 1 gigaton of cumulative carbon capture and storage capacity by 2030 if we're to remain on track for 1.5. And so the aspiration of this effort among the countries is to mobilize analysis, policies, and other actions to support projects that will cumulatively achieve that 1 gigaton by 2030 goal. At the event here at the COP, China came to the event. They haven't joined, but Xi Jinping was there as a Chinese climate envoy. He also noted the bilateral commitment that came prior to the COP between the United States and China, which includes collaboration jointly on 10 or more commercial scale carbon capture projects. So it's a tremendously exciting moment. I'd like to credit the United Arab Emirates since they're hosting this. Musab Al-Kabi mentioned the 10 million ton target for 2030. I actually organized a U.S. delegation in 2019 to the UAE because in 2016, Abu Dhabi United Emirates Steel brought online the first commercial scale carbon capture project in the steel industry in the world, and almost nobody knew about it. So the UAE has been doing a lot for a long time, and I think the rest of the world's just starting to realize that the scale of the leadership here, and so I want to compliment all of you on the Emirati side here in the room today, and a big thank you.
You know, a thematic element of this year, and one we've seen over the course of several years, is energy policy and climate policy used to be these kind of alongside each other verticals of policy, and they're really homogenized now. You really can't talk about energy and climate. I think we saw that reflected in what energy security used to be considered and how it's transforming. But now, as we move past that element, we're really bringing in finance. And I think, Francesco, you know, having the conversation and you making a point to put an emphasis on finance up front, I do want to come back to you on this. In terms of, you know, Amos spoke of a development versus investment. How is IRENA working collaboratively with the private industry, with people that are reflected in this audience, to help build a bridge and find avenues for deployment so that we can accelerate that component? And then, Brad, I want to come back to you about energy transition finance.
So we have many initiatives that we have been launched in this COP. We have showcased the result of our activities. We have our Alliance for Industry Decarbonization with 63 CEO of the major industries around the world. We have received amazing commitment on investment and also in decrease CO2 emission. We have launched the Alliance of Utilities together with TACA because we think that the infrastructure is the first priority, and we want to work regionally, having all the utilities provide also for input and knowledge sharing on how we can build plan. We will present a first plan for the infrastructure in Southeast Asia in the occasion of the next ASEAN Ministerial. We are working on that. We are working in Africa under the leadership of President Ruto. We have launched the Accelerator Partnership for Africa. It's a completely change of prospect for Africa. And we have a few African countries that want to go faster for renewables. We have some donor countries as Germany, as Denmark, as the UAE. And then the good news, and yesterday the US also joined this alliance. This could be a way to channel money for Africa in the most efficient way. Not only put more money, because we have invested in Africa last year only 2 billion.
Yeah.
To give you an idea of how we have been short on that. So it will be also another way to work in an organized way. Concerning finance, we have also our platform that is ETAF, that we have the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank, we have Masdar, we have the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, we have the OPEC Fund, we have the Inter-American Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, we have joined by the World Bank, so IFC and the MIGA for the de-risking activity. We have Swiss 3 already for the de-risk. And we have the commitment of this financial institution to put now around 4 and something billion. That is 40% of all the Green Climate Fund. So it's something that I hope that could be relevant for the developed countries.
But correct me if I'm wrong, that's still a deficient scale of deployment of capital. And so while we have progress, who do you see, and is it in the private sector, is it in governance, in governments and policy? Who are you looking for to be even more ambitious and jump in? It's great that the United States did join in to the pledge that you referenced just a moment ago, but who else needs to be there, and what more are you looking for from these policymakers and leaders?
This let me bring to conclude our assessment on the impeding barrier. So one is the infrastructure. Without infrastructure, you cannot attract private capital because they cannot plug energy, and also the building of the infrastructure is linking development to the building of a new energy system. Think about after the Second World War. Without a loan at 2% for 15 years and grace period, Europe was not here as it is now. So this has to be considered. So the other impeding barrier, the legal environment, still looking at the old centralized and fossil fuel system. The market is not yet designed for renewables because renewables have upfront cost, the operational cost. We cannot make the market work on the basis of marginal cost. We have to look at a dual way to put contract. We don't have the institutional capacity there. We have not the skills that we need. So we have this impeding barrier. Attracting capital is not the formula. 20 years from where I was still student, they were talking about carbon pricing, carbon tax, new model of finance. There are structural limits that we have. There are no formula, magical formula. We have to find a way to overcome the impeding barrier, the impeding structural barrier. We took decades to serve the old system with the infrastructure, with the legal environment, with the policies. There are no policies for switch demand as we should. You know, one of the topic here, phasing down, phasing out. I suggest to all the negotiators, stop doing this. Just ask demand in front of this, because we have not to point the finger to the supplier. There is the hypocrisy that we want to say phase out, and we are asking oil and gas. So we have to switch. We have no market for hydrogen still. So we need policies that are consistent with the building of a new energy system. And then you will have the private capital coming.
Well, and I want to continue to talk about deploying private capital because in COP26 in Glasgow, a lot of ambition around the financial sector. That's where we have the origins of GFANs and these high-level ambition to meet the climate challenge from a financial institution standpoint. It's predated by incredible efforts on the part of really Europe and to some degree the United States on changing how we deploy multilateral development bank finance for projects and development. But Brad, you spoke of a lot of enthusiasm around the methane component, and that there is capital, $1 billion raised in the context of this COP to deal with the methane challenge. A lot of the infrastructure that needs to go into realizing that methane abatement is really into conventional gas transit systems and using it within the infrastructure that we need to capture it and put it productively to use. How do we overcome those financial barriers, and what is your thoughts in terms of a transition finance component of making sure that we're not just treating this as two polar issues of brownfield, greenfield, et cetera?
Well, I think the short answer is there's no easy answer to that. The one thing that is happening, which is just take one step back, the first step in accelerating deployment in countries that outside the industrialized world is to bring costs down. And so in the United States, Musab Al-Kabi talked about the Inflation Reduction Act. There's the infrastructure bill. We are investing billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars directly as dollars into projects and infrastructure. And then we have in the Inflation Reduction Act the tax credits, which are driving private investment in projects and infrastructure. As we've seen from wind and solar around the world and other types of technologies, when you have that level of investment in innovation and deployment, it brings costs down. And we're seeing, especially in wind in China and solar in a range of countries, these countries are actually accelerating deployment faster than often where that technology started in the first place. But bringing costs down is not enough. And so we are looking at, we're trying to scale up our bilateral financing, our DFC and Exim Bank, and doing more where we can there. We're also partnering bilaterally with other countries like the United Emirates to identify third country opportunities to support projects and deployment. There's also, to be very candid, there are areas where we're only getting started. I mentioned the Carbon Management Challenge. If you are in a developing country today, it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to finance a carbon capture, transport, and storage project. And so one of the priorities of the Carbon Management Challenge is to develop a finance work stream that will involve countries and multilateral development banks working together to identify ways to accelerate whether it's expanded opportunities in multilateral development banks or bilateral financing and de-risking of projects. That's going to be a major focus of what we do, because we have to come out of this decade with projects occurring not only in the industrialized world, but also in the global south.
Francesco, we're running out of time, and I want to conclude with you on this conversation. Energy transition, the climate challenge are going to be an enduring effort. COP28 will come, it will go. It's also an incredible opportunity in the energy transition to make a better future and economic prosperity, to have broader reach on that as well. What are you hoping to see as we move past COP28 into the future COPs or the future multilateral forums that can really be institutionally supportive of the energy transition? Where do we take it from here?
Being my concluding remark, answering to your question and my hope. My hope is that we concentrate on the emergencies we are living. When in January or February the World Meteorological Organization will come with the data concerning the rising in the temperature, we will have a very bad surprise. So what we are insisting that we have very short time. So when we concert the public money, please save the public money for something that can give result before the 2030. Because the physics of the climate change cannot allow us to do after something to repair the damage. Once the damage is done, it's done. And we know that we have to reduce 43% the emission by 2030. So we have to be careful in the choice of technologies. Don't be distracted from our focus. Our focus is put how much clean energy we can in the shortest time possible. And the only option that we have, not because I am the DG of IRENA, is investing in renewables, renewables, renewables.
Thank you, Francesco. Brad, appreciate your thoughtful comments. Please join in me and thanking them for their time. Thank you.